Have you ever felt it? The subtle shift in a woman's behavior that leaves you unsettled, almost like a shadow passing over the warmth you once felt in her presence? It's the kind of feeling that nags at you, even when everything seems fine on the surface. You might notice it in the small things: a delayed response to your messages, a hint of distance in her tone, or the way her laughter no longer reaches her eyes. At first, you may dismiss it, convincing yourself it's just a bad day or that she's simply busy. But deep down, your intuition whispers that something is changing, and it's that whisper you cannot afford to ignore. What's remarkable is how easily these early signs are overlooked. Many men wait until the walls are nearly up before realizing she's pulling away, thinking that affection alone is enough to keep a connection alive. But relationships aren't maintained by hope. They are nurtured by understanding, by the ability to recognize when emotional distance starts creeping in. This isn't about blame, and it's not about manipulation. It's about awareness. Women often pull back quietly, without confrontation, because confrontation feels threatening or unnecessary to them. They don't announce it with fanfare. Instead, it's in the subtleties, the quiet, almost imperceptible gestures that reveal a change in emotional investment. If you've ever felt the sting of confusion when a woman you care about seems present one moment and distant the next, then this is the moment where clarity begins. By learning to recognize these early cues, you give yourself the opportunity to respond with intelligence rather than reaction, with presence rather than panic. Understanding doesn't mean controlling. It means seeing clearly, without denial, the reality of the emotional landscape before it becomes impossible to navigate. And here's the subtle truth many men never hear. Emotional distance rarely starts with a dramatic act. It begins with tiny withdrawals, conversations that end abruptly, smiles that arrive slower, priorities that quietly shift. A woman may not even fully realize she is pulling back at first. It's often a protective reflex, a way of testing the waters or managing unmet emotional needs. The sooner you learn to identify these signs, the better equipped you are to respond with emotional intelligence, without judgment, without desperation. Before we dive into the specific signs, there's something important to remember. Awareness is not accusation. Recognizing the shift doesn't mean you are failing or that she is intentionally trying to hurt you. It's simply the nature of human connection. Women, like all of us, fluctuate emotionally, and their patterns of closeness and distance are influenced by complex internal dynamics: her past experiences, her sense of security, and the emotional resonance she feels with you. Understanding these early patterns gives you insight into how she truly experiences the relationship and how you can navigate it with maturity and calm clarity. If you find yourself drawn into moments where distance feels confusing, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of human emotional patterns that are often left unspoken. And in today's video, we're going to explore 12 of these early signals: the quiet nudges, the hidden hesitations, and the subtle withdrawals that signal she may be pulling back. By the end, you'll see them with a clarity you didn't have before, and that awareness can change the way you relate, not to manipulate her, but to understand her, and perhaps to protect your own heart as well. So, if you're ready to see what most men completely miss in the early stages, make sure to stay until the end. And if you find this insight valuable, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that helps you understand women and relationships in a deeper, more meaningful way. This is about 500 words, perfectly within your Section 1 range. It sets a calm, reflective, and psychologically insightful tone, with an emotional hook, subtle tension, and promise of value later in the video. The first sign you might notice is a subtle shift in communication. At first, it's almost imperceptible. She may still reply to your messages, but the warmth that once colored her words begins to fade. There's less curiosity, fewer questions about your day, fewer little details that show she's mentally present with you. She might still respond, but the emotional engagement, the small, seemingly insignificant signals of interest, starts to thin. It's not dramatic, not sudden, but if you pay attention, you'll notice the difference. Communication is the heartbeat of a connection, and when that rhythm changes, it can signal the first stirrings of distance. The second sign appears in the way she initiates interaction. Previously, she may have been the one to suggest plans, reach out to share something funny, or check in just to hear your voice. But now, those moments become rare. If she used to call or text first, you might notice that the frequency drops, or that her reasons for reaching out are more transactional, focused on logistics rather than connection. It's easy to dismiss this as busyness, but there's a pattern here. Initiation requires energy, and when that energy begins to decline, it can indicate that her emotional investment is subtly shifting. The third early sign is something many men overlook because it doesn't feel threatening on the surface. She starts protecting her personal space more deliberately. It's not necessarily about physical distance. It's about emotional boundaries that grow firmer. She may be less willing to share her thoughts, her feelings, or the small everyday experiences that used to bond you. Conversations that were once open and effortless now feel guarded, with pauses, hesitations, or vague answers. This is her way of testing her own comfort, and sometimes it's also a subconscious measure of your response. She's gauging whether the connection can handle tension, disagreement, or unmet expectations. Notice how subtle these signs are. They don't scream, "I'm pulling away." Instead, they whisper it, in a language that only attentive observation can translate. And that's why so many men feel blindsided later when distance has already widened into a gap. Recognizing these early cues gives you the chance to respond with emotional clarity rather than panic. It allows you to approach the situation with curiosity instead of control, to notice without judgment, and to see the emotional truth before it becomes a problem that feels unfixable. It's important to understand that none of these signs is inherently negative on its own. People naturally fluctuate in energy, attention, and availability. But when these behaviors begin to cluster, when warmth, initiation, and openness all begin to diminish simultaneously, it's a pattern worth observing. Emotional distance grows quietly, often beginning with what feels like minor shifts. Your awareness is your advantage here. It allows you to act from a place of understanding, rather than confusion or desperation. As we continue, the next signs will go deeper, revealing the patterns that often predict long-term withdrawal if unaddressed. These are the subtle emotional cues most men completely miss, and yet they speak volumes about how a woman experiences connection and attachment. Understanding these signals isn't about control. It's about clarity, insight, and respecting both her emotional rhythm and your own needs. Another sign to watch closely is a change in how she spends time with you. When a woman is emotionally connected, she seeks shared experiences, not just to be near you, but to create memories, laugh, and explore life together. But when she begins to pull away, those invitations fade. She may still see you, but the energy behind those moments diminishes. Activities that once felt fun or effortless may now feel obligatory, or she may appear distracted, disconnected, or preoccupied during your time together. You might sense it in her posture, her tone, or even the way her eyes drift elsewhere while you're talking. It's subtle, but it's a meaningful signal of shifting emotional priorities. Closely tied to this is the next sign, a decline in emotional responsiveness. You may notice that she no longer reacts as fully to your stories, achievements, or even your struggles. Where once her empathy was immediate and present, now her responses feel delayed, lukewarm, or minimal. Emotional responsiveness is a mirror. It reflects the investment she feels in your connection. A decrease doesn't always mean disinterest. Sometimes it signals that she's protecting herself, stepping back to evaluate whether she feels safe, valued, or understood. The fifth sign emerges in her level of physical or emotional accessibility. This isn't about affection in a simplistic sense, it's about availability. If she used to share thoughts, feelings, or even casual reflections about her day, you may notice that those moments are becoming rarer. She might respond with brevity, avoid deeper discussions, or steer conversations away from vulnerability. Emotional withdrawal often begins as a protective measure, a way to prevent disappointment or preserve independence when she senses her needs may not be fully met. Another subtle but telling indicator is an increase in irritability or defensiveness over minor issues. You may feel that small disagreements or misunderstandings suddenly escalate, or that she seems easily frustrated over things that wouldn't have bothered her before. Often, this isn't about you personally, it's a sign that she's mentally and emotionally creating distance. When the connection feels strained or uncertain, she may unconsciously erect boundaries to manage her own emotional comfort. Recognizing this early is crucial because it signals that her emotional energy is being diverted away from closeness. These patterns are rarely accidental. Women are highly attuned to their inner sense of safety and emotional satisfaction, and when something feels off, their behavior shifts before they even consciously decide to step back. And it's in these small, almost invisible changes that the truth quietly reveals itself. Men often miss these cues because they are subtle, woven into the rhythms of everyday interaction. Yet, when observed carefully, they paint a clear picture. Her connection is shifting, and the emotional tide is moving. Understanding this doesn't mean panic or over-analysis. It's not about trying to control her reactions or win her attention. Awareness is your tool. It allows you to approach the situation with clarity, empathy, and self-respect. By noticing these early signs, you gain insight into both her emotional state and the health of the connection, giving you the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. One of the most telling signs of emotional withdrawal is a shift in her priorities. You may notice that things that once mattered in your relationship, shared plans, quality time, even small gestures of consideration, begin to take a backseat. She might suddenly seem more focused on work, friendships, or solo activities, which isn't inherently negative. Independence is healthy. But when these priorities consistently come at the expense of your connection, it can indicate that her emotional focus is slowly moving elsewhere. The energy that once fueled closeness is being redirected, and this redirection is often one of the earliest indicators of pulling away. Closely related is the way she interacts with mutual friends or social circles. When a woman is fully invested, she naturally integrates you into her social world. She shares experiences, introduces you to friends, or seeks to include you in activities. But if you notice that she's increasingly separate in social situations, less enthusiastic about joint gatherings, or even distant when friends are around, it may be a subtle sign of detachment. Social behavior often reflects underlying emotional alignment. When closeness diminishes privately, it often follows publicly as well. Another early sign is a noticeable change in her expressions of appreciation or acknowledgement. Gratitude and recognition are often subtle, easy to overlook, but deeply revealing. If she stops acknowledging your efforts, compliments you less, or seems indifferent to gestures that once mattered, it may be because her emotional engagement is waning. Again, this isn't necessarily about resentment or negativity. It's about the emotional bandwidth she has available. When she's gradually pulling back, her capacity to express care in small but meaningful ways often diminishes first. A fourth sign in this stage involves her willingness to make future plans with you. In the beginning, even tentative ideas about upcoming events or trips may have felt exciting, and she likely participated actively in planning them. When a woman is emotionally stepping back, discussions of the future often become vague, postponed, or avoided entirely. She may react to proposals with hesitancy, deflect with uncertainty, or show subtle signs of reluctance. This is a key signal because planning for the future requires investment, a form of emotional commitment. When that willingness declines, it often signals that she is mentally and emotionally reassessing the connection. What's crucial to understand is that these signs don't emerge as isolated events. They occur in clusters, often layered with other subtle cues you may have already noticed. By the time these patterns become noticeable, her emotional distance may have been growing quietly for weeks or even months. The danger isn't in the individual signs themselves. It's in failing to recognize the pattern that they form together. Observing these shifts allows you to engage with clarity, to notice the truth without judgment, and to act from a place of insight rather than fear. Recognizing these signs doesn't mean the relationship is doomed. It means you have a chance to respond thoughtfully, to evaluate your own emotional needs, and to communicate in ways that honor both her experience and your own. Emotional intelligence is about seeing the reality before it becomes overwhelming, and this stage in particular offers that clarity if you're paying attention. Another subtle but significant sign is a change in her body language and overall presence around you. Human beings communicate far more through posture, facial expressions, and energy than through words. When a woman begins to pull away, you may notice her leaning away slightly, keeping more physical distance, or presenting less openness in her gestures. Her smile may feel delayed or less engaged, and her eyes may no longer seek yours in the same way. These nonverbal cues are rarely conscious, but they speak volumes. They are her body's way of creating a buffer, an invisible line that reflects her shifting emotional availability. Closely connected is the gradual withdrawal from sharing personal thoughts and feelings. She may have once confided in you effortlessly, sharing her hopes, frustrations, or even small daily experiences. But now, those moments become fewer or more superficial. Emotional sharing requires trust and investment. When that trust begins to feel uncertain, or when emotional fatigue creeps in, she instinctively pulls back. This isn't a rejection of you. It's her way of managing her own comfort and protecting herself from potential hurt. For a man paying close attention, this is one of the most telling early indicators of distance. Another sign to watch for is subtle hesitation in responding to your cues for closeness. You might suggest spending time together, a shared activity, or even a meaningful conversation, and notice that her reactions are more measured, delayed, or non-committal. Where she may have once embraced these opportunities, she now hesitates, sometimes offering vague alternatives or postponing plans without clear explanation. Hesitation is her mind's way of creating space, signaling that she's recalibrating her emotional engagement. Recognizing this early is crucial because it tells you not just what she is doing, but also how she feels internally, uncertain, cautious, or protective of her own emotional state. A fourth sign at this stage is a change in the intensity of her emotional responses toward you. When a woman is deeply invested, her reactions to your successes, struggles, or even jokes are alive, immediate, and heartfelt. But when she begins to pull back, you may notice her reactions becoming muted, delayed, or distant. It's not necessarily cold or negative. It's quieter, more neutral. This subtle dampening of emotional resonance reflects an inward shift. Her emotional energy is no longer flowing toward the connection in the same way, and her responses serve as an early signal that distance is increasing. What's important to remember is that these signals are rarely dramatic. They are whispers, not alarms. The difference between connection and withdrawal often lies in these quiet, almost imperceptible moments. A man who notices them early gains an invaluable advantage, the ability to respond with clarity, empathy, and self-awareness. Emotional intelligence here is not about trying to fix or control her. It's about seeing clearly, understanding the pattern, and recognizing that the quality of the connection depends as much on your awareness as on her actions. Paying attention to these subtle signs now allows you to navigate the emotional landscape with insight. It gives you a chance to protect your heart, maintain your self-respect, and engage with the relationship in a way that honors both your needs and hers. Emotional distance grows quietly, but awareness, once developed, speaks loudly. As the patterns of emotional withdrawal continue, one of the clearest signs is a shift in her priorities. Activities, hobbies, or commitments that once balanced with your connection may now consistently take precedence over shared time. Independence is healthy, but when it repeatedly comes at the expense of closeness, it signals that her emotional focus is subtly moving elsewhere. Alongside this, you might notice a reluctance to be vulnerable. Where she once shared fears, hopes, or even small daily reflections, conversations may now feel lighter, surface level, or less revealing. This isn't a reflection of you personally. It's her way of protecting herself while she assesses emotional safety and investment. You may also notice a decrease in enthusiasm for all forms of intimacy, not just physical, but emotional and experiential. Shared laughter, meaningful conversations, or spontaneous moments of connection may feel muted or less engaging. This subtle change often precedes more obvious distance, quietly signaling a shift in her emotional energy. Additionally, she may begin to avoid addressing minor conflicts or misunderstandings. Rather than communicating directly, she might deflect, postpone, or disengage. This avoidance isn't about disrespect, it's a protective mechanism, an effort to preserve emotional energy while she evaluates her investment in the relationship. These patterns rarely appear in isolation. Taken together with earlier signs, shifts in communication, decreased initiation, reduced responsiveness, and changes in social behavior, they create a clear picture of emotional withdrawal. But recognizing these patterns isn't about blame or panic, it's about awareness. Emotional intelligence is the ability to notice these shifts without judgment, to see clearly, and to respond thoughtfully. Awareness allows you to communicate calmly, nurture connection where possible, and maintain your own emotional integrity, even when distance grows. Ultimately, understanding these early signs transforms uncertainty into clarity. You gain insight not only into her emotional state, but also into your own needs, boundaries, and sense of self-respect. Some distance may be temporary, some patterns may indicate deeper reassessment, but in all cases, awareness empowers you to act from insight rather than impulse. Relationships are a delicate balance between intimacy and independence, connection and self-preservation. By seeing these subtle cues, you strengthen your understanding of both her psychology and your own emotional intelligence. If you found these insights valuable, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Awareness doesn't just help you understand her, it gives you clarity, confidence, and the ability to navigate connection with dignity, insight, and emotional resilience.